A question just for you. Have you ever read through the Psalms and wondered, does God actually say, "I love you," anywhere in here? Not in a vague general way. Not the kind of thing you hear in a sermon and nod along to, but really, directly. The way a person looks at you and means it. You have probably heard 100 times that God loves you. It is one of the first things people learn in church. It is on bumper stickers and greeting cards. But there is a difference between knowing something in your head and feeling it settle somewhere deeper, in your chest, in your bones. Some people have been reading their Bible for 50, 60, 70 years, and they still find themselves, in a quiet moment, wanting to find the place where God just says it, simply, to them. If that is you, you are in the right place today. We are going to walk through the Psalms together, slowly. And I want to show you something. God says, "I love you," more times than you may have noticed. He just doesn't always use those 3 words. He says it the way people who really love you say it. Through what they do. Through the fact that they stay. Through the way they come after you even when you wander. By the time we are done, I think you will see it everywhere. God's love doesn't always sound like ours. There is something worth understanding before we open to any specific psalm. We live in a time when love is expected to announce itself loudly. Songs about it, movies about it, people posting about it. 3 words said quickly, sometimes without much behind them. But the people who have loved you most in your life, think about them for a moment. Did they say, "I love you," every single day? Maybe some of them did. But what you remember most is probably not the words. It is the time your mother sat up with you when you were sick. The way your husband or wife was just there, without you having to ask. The friend who showed up after your loss and didn't try to say anything clever, just showed up. That is what love looks like when it is real and old and deep. And that is exactly how God's love shows up in the Psalms. It shows up as rescue, as protection at night, as someone who remembers you when you have forgotten yourself, as a presence that does not leave when things get dark. The Psalms are soaked in this kind of love. Once you learn to recognize it, you will not be able to stop seeing it. It is on almost every page, in almost every verse. A love that acts before it speaks. A love that has been there longer than you have been paying attention. Psalm 18, love that rescues. Psalm 18 opens with 4 words that David wrote after one of the hardest seasons of his life. He had been hunted, betrayed, running for years. He had looked death in the face more than once and somehow survived. And when it was over, he sat down and wrote this. The very first thing he said was, "I love you, Lord, my strength." Just like that. Straight to it. No long introduction, just, "I love you." Now, it is David saying it to God. But what comes next is God answering that love with everything he has. David describes the moment he cried out from the deepest fear of his life, and he says God heard him, not eventually. Not when David had cleaned himself up and become worthy of an answer. Immediately. He writes that God reached down from on high and took hold of him, drew him out of deep waters. That Hebrew word David uses for love at the start of this psalm, racham, it comes from the same root as the word for a mother's womb. A fierce, physical, gut-level tenderness. The kind of love that cannot sit still when someone it loves is in pain. This is not a polite love. It is not a God who watches from a safe distance and wishes you well. It is a God who jumps in. If you have ever been in a moment you did not think you would survive a diagnosis, a loss, a night so dark you couldn't see morning and you came out the other side not entirely sure how, then Psalm 18 is your psalm. That was not luck. That was a love that reached down. Psalm 23, love that stays. Most people have heard Psalm 23 so many times they think they know it. And they do know it. But there is one word near the end that most people read right past without stopping. And when you finally stop on it, the whole psalm opens up differently. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Even through the darkest valley, he is with me. And then, surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Follow, that one word. In Hebrew, the word is radaf. And it does not mean to walk quietly behind someone, keeping a respectful distance. Radaf means to pursue, to chase, to go after something relentlessly, without stopping. It is the same word used in the Bible when an army pursues a retreating enemy. It is urgent, determined, it will not quit. So what God is saying in Psalm 23 is not that goodness and mercy will politely accompany you through life. He is saying they will chase you, even on the days you pull away, even on the days faith feels thin and far away, even on the days you have wandered so far you are not sure you can find your way back. Goodness and mercy are already running after you. That is not a God who tolerates you from a distance and hopes for the best. That is a God who sends love after you like it has somewhere to be, like it will not rest until it finds you. That is Psalm 23. Once you slow down long enough to let it land. Psalm 103. Love that remembers you're human. There is one verse in Psalm 103 I want you to sit with. Just one. For he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. He knows your frame. That means he knows exactly what these years have cost you. He knows the tiredness that lives in your body now, the grief you carry quietly so as not to burden anyone, the prayers you have prayed that didn't seem to be answered the way you hoped. He is not standing at a distance with his arms crossed, wondering why you are not stronger. He knows you are dust. He made you from it. He knew from the very beginning what you could carry and what you couldn't, and he loves you in full knowledge of all of it. Earlier in the same psalm, David writes something even more tender. As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. Think of the most gentle father you have ever known, or the one you always wished you had. That particular patience a good father has for a child who is struggling. Not disappointment, not frustration, just steady, warm compassion that meets you exactly where you are. That is the image God chooses for himself in this psalm. Psalm 103 is written for the person who is tired, who has been faithful for a long time through hard things, and sometimes wonders quietly if any of it registered. Who needs to hear that God is not grading your performance? He is not keeping a tally of your weak days. He sees your frame. He knows what you are made of, and he loves you not despite it, in it, all of it. Psalm 139. Love that was there before you were. Psalm 139 is one of the most personal things written in the entire Bible. David is not writing about history or prophecy or the nation of Israel. He is writing about himself, about being known by God in a way that goes back further than memory. He writes, "You knit me together in my mother's womb, before you had a name, before your parents held you, before you had done a single thing right or wrong in this world. You were already known, already loved, already being carefully made." And then he writes something that stops you cold. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Every day of your life already seen, already known before the first one arrived. Now, when you are young, that verse feels beautiful, but a little abstract, something you nod at in church and file away. But when you have actually lived most of those days, when you can look back over a long life and see the turns that surprised you, the losses you didn't see coming, the moments something held you that you still can't fully explain, Psalm 139 stops being abstract. It starts to look like evidence. A love that was working long before you were aware of it. A love with a longer memory than yours. A love that was writing your story before you knew there was one. You were not an accident, not a background character, not someone God is making the best of. You were known, on purpose, before the very beginning of you. Psalm 46. The quietest, I love you. Not every I love you is spoken out loud. Some of the deepest ones never are. You probably know this from your own life. The person who sat with you in the hospital and didn't say anything because there was nothing to say, but they stayed anyway. The friend who came after the funeral and just made tea. The presence that didn't need to explain itself. Sometimes, love is just being there. Steady, unshakable, not going anywhere. Psalm 46 is that kind of love. The psalm opens with everything falling apart, mountains crumbling, the sea churning, nations at war, the whole world in chaos. It is not a gentle image. It is the feeling of when everything you trusted has started to shake. And right in the middle of all of it, quietly, God speaks. Be still and know that I am God. Just that. Be still. There is enormous love in those two words. Because what God is not saying is figure this out. What he is not saying is be stronger, be better, do more. He is saying, you can stop. I have this. I have always had this. And I have you. For someone who has spent a lifetime being strong, being the one others leaned on, being responsible and steady for everyone around them, that invitation to simply be still can feel like the most loving thing anyone has ever said. Sometimes I love you sounds like finally being given permission to rest. These psalms were written for people like you. Here is something that is easy to forget about the people who wrote the psalms. They were not sitting comfortably in a quiet library, writing poetry from a place of peace and certainty. David wrote Psalm 18 while hiding from someone who wanted him dead. He wrote Psalm 23 after years of living rough and uncertain. The writers of these psalms were people in the middle of real suffering, real fear, real grief, long seasons when God felt silent and the darkness didn't lift. They wrote from inside the hard thing, not after it. And that is exactly why, 3,000 years later, these words still reach people. Because you have been inside hard things too. Most people watching this have had a long life, a full one, with joy and loss woven together in a way that only time can do, with grief carried quietly so it didn't worry anyone else, with faith that was tested and sometimes bent nearly to the ground but didn't break. The Psalms were not written for people who have everything figured out. They were written for people who kept going anyway, who came back to God even when it was hard, who opened their Bible in the early morning, not because they had the answers, but because they needed the company. That kind of faithfulness, the quiet, worn, stubborn kind, is exactly what the Psalms were made to hold. They were written for you. A prayer for tonight. Before we end this video, I want to leave you with something you can take with you. Tonight, when the house is quiet and the day is done, you can whisper this. You don't need to kneel. You don't need to close your eyes. You can say it wherever you are, in whatever shape today has left you in. Lord, I don't always know how to say what I feel, but I know you reached down when I was sinking. You chased me with goodness when I didn't deserve it. You knew me before I knew myself. You didn't ask me to be strong, just still. Thank you for saying I love you over and over again, even when I wasn't listening. That is Psalm 18, Psalm 23, Psalm 103, Psalm 139, Psalm 46. All of them carrying the same thing underneath. In different words, in different moments, written by different people in different kinds of pain. But always the same message. I love you. I have always loved you. I am not going to stop.